of the May Milford Board of Aldermen. We are here to consider one ordinance, and I'm going to ask Madam Secretary, would you please refer to the public posting for this meeting?
Yes, it was published in the New Haven Register on Wednesday, April 28th, I believe was the date.
Very good. And Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Frank Smith,
Here.
Alderman Gennatasio,
Here.
Alderman Harla,
Here.
Alderman Sutton, Alderman Vitale.
Here.
4 present.
Okay. I think Tony is here. He may just still be signing on. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And thank you for, I think this is our 3rd or 4th virtual ordinance committee meeting since we went into shutdown last year at this time. We're here tonight to consider one ordinance appropriating $12,915,000 for improvements to Pumpkin Delight Elementary School and authorizing the issuance of $12,915,000 of bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Are you going to open a discussion for us, or are you going to open it to the, I guess, how does this work now?
No, this is just for our committee, Ray. So,
Okay,
I mean, you know, this is the only thing that's, so if we turn this down, we don't have a Board of
Okay.
Aldermen meeting today.
just a couple of questions then.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I can address this to Jimmy. Hi, Jim, how you doing?
Hi, Ray.
Being on
everyone.
the committee, being on the Permanent Schools Committee, I just like to have you elaborate a little bit and know that Jeff is here from the Tecton, the associates, the engineers, architects, excuse me. First of all, this is coming in less than what was not proposed, but how come we're getting such feedback? Is there anything on my end?
That's your end, right? If you turn your video up, you might have a problem with your feed.
The video?
Yeah, maybe try
Is
that.
better? Is that better?
Sounds better.
Okay. Jim, can you just review with us? I know this money, the 12.9, is a lot less than what was quoted with the architects a while back. I guess, again, I'm getting feedback. I can hear it myself. Can you guys hear me all right, or what?
I hear you fine, Ray. I don't hear the feedback either.
I'm hearing feedback. Anyway, could you tell us if this, in fact, includes the air conditioning of the building, number one, and how many square feet are we at this point, as opposed to the original plan that we had to reduce to some aspect?
Good evening, everyone on the Ordinance Committee. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members of the Ordinance Committee. My name is Jim Riccitelli. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Milford Public Schools. Also with me tonight is Matthew Woods, who is the Chairman of the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee, who your board has charged with the planning and implementation of the Pumpkin Delight project. Also, I have Pat Bradbury, the Facilities Director for Milford Public Schools, and the architects for the job is Tecton Architects. And here tonight is Eddie Wadowski and Jeffrey Wazinski. So we're all here to answer any questions that you have, either here at the Ordinance Committee or later on at the full board meeting. And before I even begin, I want to express the gratitude of the Board of Aldermen for putting the money forward last year in the bond authorization, which allowed us to begin the process and hire an architect and get to the point where we are tonight. I want to thank the mayor for recommending this bond authorization and the members of the Board of Finance for recommending it to you. So, you know, there's a, you know, this goes back a couple of months now that the Permanent School Committee, since they hired Tecton, have been in the planning phases. And the reason why we're before you tonight is in order for this project to receive state reimbursement, which is about 37 and a half or so reimbursement from the state of Connecticut, they require the local the local town or city to put its share of the money up front before we can even apply for the project. We have a June 30th deadline for getting our application in, or else it gets pushed back for a whole year. So we're up against a little bit of a time crunch. But at any rate, getting to Ray's question, that was just a little bit of background, or I'm sorry, to Alderman Vitale's question. The architects, when the committee asked the architects to come with an initial estimate, the estimate was much more than we had in the capital improvement plan, which was our best estimate before we hired the architect. So it was higher at that point, and since then, the building committee has, you know, has sharpened its pencils. Tecton has gone back and looked at ways that we can value engineer and get things whittled down as best we can. The project before you is, you know, just to give you the guts of it, there's much more involved, but it will, the Pumpkin Delight School was built in 1949. It's one of our two oldest schools, that and West Shore Middle School. It had an addition put on in 1955, and since then has had very little outside of you know, things like roof and windows and things like that, but no major alterations to the building since 1955. The educational requirements of an elementary school today are much different than they were in 1955, and so the gym, which also serves as the cafeteria or multi-purpose room, is woefully undersized for an elementary school gym, and well smaller than any of the other elementary schools in Milford. In addition, 5 of the 8 elementary schools have dedicated media centers. Pumpkin Delight does not. It currently has 2 classrooms that are put together, and it serves as basically a library, but it does not have one of the you know, state-of-the-art modern media centers that the other elementary schools do. This project would also, we would build an addition, which would be a new gym, and the gym would serve as a cafeteria and lunchroom. The current multi-purpose room, gym / cafeteria will become the media center, you know, an up-to-date, up to educational standards media center with parity with the other elementary schools in Milford. The project will include the security upgrades that all of the other schools are either undergoing now or have undergone. And those are in requirements with the State Security Infrastructure Council. And the last piece is just general code upgrades, general updates to the building. So similar to the East Shore project and the West Shore project, those are the 2 most recent projects that we undertook. Pumpkin Delight is the next one in that line, and this will bring Pumpkin Delight up to you know, educational standards for 2021, not educational standards that were just fine in 1955. So it's long overdue. As I said, we're grateful, and the money that is appropriated by your board, hopefully, I know that the committee will stretch it as far as it can go and get as much out of it as we possibly can.
I guess there's one other question that wasn't answered. Is that, I can't remember, is that including the AC air conditioning of the entire building?
No.
Okay,
That was,
I
that
know
was
that
one,
was a short,
that was one of the items that, that the committee had asked for. We've included it as an add alternate, which means that it's not part of the base bid, but those who bid on the contract will also bid on that. And if there's enough money, if the project comes in low enough, then we may be able to add that air conditioning. But currently, there's not enough money to do that.
what kind of money are we talking about putting that AC in there? I can't remember that number. Was it 550, 500? What, something?
Well,
I think it's
I'm-
$200,000 to air condition just the 1949. So it does incorporate air conditioning into the new portions of the building. That's part of the base bid as well as the 55 edition. But in order to increase the air conditioning for the 1949, it would be an extra 200,000.
So it would be $200,000 so on top of what is already there, another $200,000, and the whole building would be air conditioned, as I hear what you're saying.
no, that's not correct.
1949 edition.
Okay, so this number, this 12.9 that we're looking at for bonding will air condition the 49 edition or not?
Eddie, can you weigh in on that?
Yes. Hi, good evening. Thank you. So what's carried in the base price, the 12.9, is that any of the new constructions, the new addition, the multi-purpose space, cafeteria, gym, that is going to be fully air conditioned. Then what we also have is we have ventilation for the two-story 1949 section. The additional $200,000 would be to add air conditioning to that two-story 1949 section. At present, there is no plan to do any the remainder of the building, the single-story 1955 section.
So if we were, so again, it's a dubious kind of situation here. In order, the 12.9 is taking into consideration some of the AC or ventilation, whatever we're talking about, to add an addition, to get the whole building up to snuff, what would the additional cost be?
Yeah, if we were to completely ventilate and completely air condition the entire building, which I believe that's the question here, correct?
Right, yes,
That's about another $700,000, roughly.
700,000 approximately, okay.
Yes.
You know, I've always been an advocate of the fact that we have to have a positive learning environment for these kids. And while we're doing these renovations, that air conditioning, I think, is essential. I mean, we know we have IEPs with kids that follow grade levels that follow, they have air conditioners following them within the structure of the building. So as I've experienced being a principal of one of the buildings a while back. So child A is in room or grade 1 and needs an air conditioning because of an IEP. So when he goes into second grade, sometimes we don't take that air conditioner out of that other room because of the age of it or whatever, just buy a new one. So you got these buildings with these window air conditioning units hanging out of them, which aesthetically is not pleasing at all to a new construction. We're going to be looking at using these buildings more and more during the summer because of what's happening with COVID-19 and the pandemic. If it's $700,000, and I know the administration has said right along that when we bond, money is really cheap at this particular point in time. Isn't it more beneficial for us to take this number and do what we need to do to these buildings, because we need to create a learning environment that's conducive to what is going on today in the educational field? And I guess my other question is, if we can't use this, if we can't find this $700,000, Jim, what about the non-lapsing fund? Why can't we use some of that money to foot bill for the air conditioning in that building?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale, that money is earmarked for COVID-related expenses. And I can assure you that we've already counted on what that money will be spent for. The cost of COVID far outweighs the amount of money that's in our budget. So we've been supplementing that with the various federal grants and state grants that have come our way. But we still will have a deficit at the end of the year, and that's where the non-lapsing fund money will come into.
Right, and I guess with the American Rescue Fund, I mean, we're going to be getting a reasonable amount of money. They say that the amount of money that we're going to get post-COVID is more than the money that was allocated post-depression time, years in the 30s. So, I don't know if, the money coming down is extraordinary. I mean, I talked to a couple of superintendents and it's almost like, I don't even know how we're going to spend that money. So, but that's beside the point. But I really would beg the idea here that we go through with doing that entire building for another $700,000 with their 37.5% reimbursement. I think we'd be cutting our nose to spite our face not to air condition that entire building, just for the comfortability of what goes on in that building. And if we try to extend that year into summer, these kids are gonna need that. We've closed schools for coldness. We closed schools because it's too hot. So at least they would have a refuge to go into and spend the rest of most of their day in an air-conditioned environment. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale, I don't disagree with you. We don't know exactly how we can spend some of this federal money that's coming down the pike, including the American Rescue Plan money. But if it is eligible to use, I know that they did signal that school systems and communities would be able to use it for things like ventilation and air conditioning. If we are able to use it, we may. Again, if we get 100% from the federal government, we can't get additional money back for a reimbursement from the state. But there's a likelihood, which is why the plan is to place some of these ad alternates into the bid package, so that if the bids come in lower or we receive additional federal money, grant money that is specifically able to be used for this, we can perhaps supplement the overall project.
It just seems to me, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up, that no matter what the laws are and the legislation is, and especially section 10248A, which is the unexpended educational funds account, it always indicates and has three tenets. We already know that you can't put more than your operating budgeted appropriation cannot exceed 2%, and that it has to be authorized by the Board of Education. But it also says that it shall be used for only educational purposes. Each expenditure from such account shall be made only for educational purposes. So there's a tremendous amount of latitude there as far as what monies can be used for. So I say, let's give it another thought and let's do something complete. We put other buildings together. We've not put air conditioning in it, and I think we suffered for it. And again, we want equity. We want equity. We look at equity across the town. The equity of one side of the building as opposed to the other side of the building. If your kid needs to be put is in that other side of the building that's not air conditioned. I mean, what does that say? What does that say? We're cutting our nose to spite our face, I think. And so I would be in favor of amending that to go to 700 and paying for what we need. And if we get reimbursed from other federal funds, then it's there. And again, we have that non-lapsing amount of money in there, as Jimmy had indicated before. There's $1 million in that budget. So
Thank you, Ray. We have a motion. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion?
Chairman Smith, Alderman
I'm sorry.
Giannatasio has his hand up.
Yep, got it. Tony, Alderman Giannatasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Good evening, everyone. I would just like to also echo what Alderman Vitality's concerns are. I share the same concerns. I think it would be best practice at this point to try to implement the air conditioning throughout the whole building. I do have a question. If that does not come to fruition, due to budgetary concerns or setbacks, what portion of this 1949 building, what actually would not have air conditioning? What specific classrooms or what grade levels? Would you be able to indicate exactly who would be without the air conditioning, worst case scenario? What part of the building is that right
Yeah,
now?
The and Pat, Eddie, jump in. The new additions will be fully air conditioned. So the gym and the multipurpose room will be fully air conditioned. The new media center will be fully air conditioned.
Science room.
The science room, the new science room, and I believe that's it. That's what will be air conditioned at this point.
Oh, okay. So it's more than just, it sounds like a bigger portion of the building. So it consists of many classrooms without air conditioning.
So in the original part of the building, they're going to add ventilation to that. And then there's a $200,000 price tag that the architects have on that. They're going to try and get into an ad alternate, correct, Ed?
That's correct.
So that would do the whole front section of the building.
Yep.
And then the back part of the building, all the entire one-story structure. It's a whole back wing, that 1959 edition, I believe. That would be the next piece that we're not touching ventilation and we're not touching air conditioning in that piece of the building.
So just to follow up through you, Mr. Chairman, on the permanent schools committee level, what was the purpose of this not being all-inclusive air conditioning? Was it due to the budget? Completely, was it $1 because of the expense of the construction? They just couldn't add in this air conditioning, so it ended up not being added in? What was the discussion at that level?
And Matt, do you want to jump in as the chairman of the committee?
The building committee is typically given very general, broad outlines for projects that are assigned by the Board of Aldermen based upon recommendations from Milford Public Schools. So the first pass that the architects and the building committee put together for the project resulted in a construction cost, including contingency and soft costs, of $18,194,000. That was the February 12, 2021 preliminary budget, which we knew was too high. So the March 2nd, 2021 budget was down to $15,656,000, where we made cuts. That was still too high. The March 12th budget was $12,243,000, but that included reducing the size of the gymnasium. So the April 2021 budget that we presented to the Board of Finance was the roughly $12.25 million budget that made up the bonding package that the ordinance committee is considering tonight. So basically, we were aiming at a roughly $12 million construction budget, because then the finance director has to add financing to come up with a total bonding package. That's where we are tonight. Obviously, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride, and we'd have an $18 million budget and everything would be done. But money being what it is, we're happy that we're getting what we're getting. The 12.3 million for construction, plus a little over 600,000 for finance to make up the $12,915,000 bonding ordinance that you're considering tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, through you, before we move on, would we be at liberty to make that amendment that Alderman Vitale mentioned at this level before we vote it up or down and forward it to the full board?
You mean vote on the additional amount in the ordinance committee?
Right.
Personally prefer not to do that. I'm not quite sure what I suppose we could, but I would prefer to vote it for a full debate with the full board.
And Mr. Chairman, just as background, we're looking to incorporate things like the air conditioning in as a ad alternate that could be funded through federal grants. It could be funded if the bids come in lower. It could be funded through a variety of different non-bonded ways that aren't coming directly from the municipality. If your board elects to increase the bond amount, it cannot increase it by $700,000 because that is over the threshold that our city attorney and past city attorneys have consulted with bond counsel and said that in order for a bond adjustment to remain germane, it has to be less than 5%. So if this board was going to move forward with making an adjustment of $700,000, which is more than 5%, an entire new bond would have to be drafted. It would have to go through the Board of Finance. Again, start from the beginning. And I know that Mr. Riccitelli mentioned that while most school construction projects, time is not of the essence because we normally do them we normally get authorization in February. This one's a little bit later. And we're up against that June 30th deadline because not only does your board have to adopt this ordinance tonight, but then at the June Board of Aldermen meeting, you have to adopt the minutes. Those are two of the requirements required for the state reimbursement to take effect. Both of those pieces of information need to be received by the state by or before June 30th. I believe, Mr. Riccitelli, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Just one last comment. I understand clearly, Mayor Blake. I just feel that this should have been done in advance. I don't know what kind of parameters were put on this job, this scope of work overall. I think, at this point, if we're at 12 million and we need to have equity throughout the building as far as air conditioning, I think the money's being well spent. I don't see any argument with that. But I just feel a little uncomfortable at this point, voting for something and wishing or hoping or that this air conditioning is included at some point in the project. I would just hate to see that it's not being included. So I understand your point about the 5%. That's well taken. Maybe at the very least, we should adjust it at the full board as part of our discussion. I think that might, help move things along. But I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time, and I'll be supporting this moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Giannatasio. I think Mr. Woods kind of laid out the chronology on this. So even though it wasn't discussed as far as the HVAC was concerned, we whittled this down to the bond package we have. And I certainly remember that 5% exception on an earlier issue we had with a bonding package. Alderman Harla.
Just thank you through you, Chairman. Quick question for the architects. Does the building currently have separate heating and cooling infrastructure? So in other words, will the heat be running through the same vents, ducts as the air conditioning would be through the building?
The heating system would be separate.
It's separate right now in the building?
Yeah. Right now, there really is nothing. The heating is on its own, and really there's an exhaust system. There's no ventilation or fresh air provided. The base package does include a complete replacement of the entire heating system for the building.
So if in fact the entire building wasn't chosen to be cooled, air conditioned, the entire system would be upgraded?
Yes, the base package does include heating for the entire building.
Okay, but what I'm saying is if in fact the air conditioning was done for the entire building as Alderman Giannatasio and Alderman Vitale suggested, the entire system in theory would be more efficient than what's proposed right now.
Perhaps.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Harla. Alderman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, I think, can be answered by multiple members on this panel right now. Were we to add the approximately $700,000 to fully air condition the school at this point, would that be cheaper than doing it next year or in a subsequent year under an additional bond issuance?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Sutton, as brief background, none of our schools out of the 14 elementary schools are fully air conditioned. The one that's closest is Foreign High, and I've sat through many a graduation ceremony in the hot gymnasium that was not air conditioned. But other than portions of a lot of schools, I know that JFK is more air conditioned than most of the elementary schools. East Shore just got an addition. The only portion of that building really that is air conditioned is the new addition, not the rest of the school. And that's kind of consistent throughout. None of our buildings are fully air conditioned. This one would be, from an elementary school standpoint, and really other than Foreign High, the most air conditioned out of all 14 of our elementary schools. My thought would be to have each of our elementary schools very well air conditioned, if financially possible. My hope is that we are going to be receiving lots of money this year. And one of the things that they talk about is that we can utilize that money. We should know in the next couple of weeks when the Department of the Treasury comes out with their guidance, we can use that money for things like ventilation and air conditioning. It's my hope that we can fund the ad alternate that we're going to be incorporated into the bid documents with federal money as opposed to local bond money. That's my hope for this project. We've asked the architects and engineers that are going to be finalizing the bid documents to incorporate in an area with an ad alternate that we can use with other money, whether that's the bids come in low or some other type of funding. But I do not think you can adjust the bond to add an additional $700,000. One, I don't think you need to, because I think that there's other ways to pay for it without having to put it on the city's credit card. But I also think that if you increase the bond by over $700,000, which was discussed, it's not going to be consistent with past recommendations from bond counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anything further on the motion here? We're running out of our allotted half hour. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Smith, I think you muted yourself.
You talking to me, Tony?
I was, you muted yourself, so I didn't hear. Were you ready to call the vote?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, would you please call the vote?
Okay. Chairman Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Genitalia,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale.
Yes.
All are in favor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The motion carries unanimously and will be recommended to the full board here directly following this meeting. I want to thank everybody for the discussion, the aldermen. I want to thank Mr. Riccitelli, Mr. Rudowski, Mr. Woods, and for their assistance tonight. And we will recommend the full board. Is there anything else to come before this committee? Seeing none, call to adjourn, Madam Secretary.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'm sorry, guys, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, Madam Secretary.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Yes,
Alderman Genatasio,
Yes.
Alderman Harlow,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale.
Yes.
All are in favor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, everyone, and we'll take this up at the coming Board of Aldermen meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Justin, we can stay on this meeting, or do we have to sign back in again?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Okay, there you are, Phil. All right. I gotta get coffee, though.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Monday, May 3rd, 2021. Welcome to the May meeting of the Milford Board of Aldermen. This meeting is being conducted remotely, and as we begin, I wanted to take the opportunity to highlight a few guidelines to ensure business runs efficiently and that all statutory and administrative rules are followed. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act and Governor Lamont's executive orders, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the City of Milford's website. If a member of the board would like to speak, please utilize the raise your hand feature via Zoom. Please do not speak over one another, and when you are not speaking, please keep your phones and computers on mute. After being recognized to speak, please state your name prior to making a statement. With that, will everyone please stand up wherever you are, and please join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Beatty,
Present.
Alderman Gainer,
Here.
Alderman Genatasio,
Here.
Alderman Golden,
Here.
Alderman Hardeman,
Here.
Alderman Harlow,
Here.
Alderman Marlowe,
Here.
Alderman Parente,
Here.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Here.
Alderman Winthrop Smith,
Here.
Alderman Sutton,
Here.
Alderman Frank Lilly.
Here.
Alderman Vitro,
Here.
Alderman Vitale,
Here.
Alderman.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have 15 present. We do have a quorum. The next portion of the meeting is devoted to public comment. Please use the raise your hand feature via Zoom or state your name if you're using the conference line. Statements are limited to the legislative function of the Board of Aldermen. The time limit granted to each speaker shall be 3 minutes. Residents, taxpayers, and electors may address the board at this time or provide comment through email. The board encourages speakers not to express derogatory, insensitive, or offensive statements or to engage in personal attacks against individuals. In order for everyone an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that everyone please limit their comments to 3 minutes. We received the following comments submitted via Board of Aldermen email account. We have Art Gosselin. The address is 40 Odell Avenue. And we have Kristen Leibelt, 94 Monroe Street. Item 3 on the agenda, Alderman Sutton. Consideration of minutes for the regular meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board approves the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen held on April 5, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Beatty,
Yes.
Alderman Gainer,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
Yes.
Alderman Golden,
Yes.
Alderman Hardeman,
Yes.
Alderman Harlow,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe,
Yes.
Alderman Parente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli,
Yes.
Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis,
Yes.
all in favor.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next item on the agenda is special meeting minutes, and there isn't any to consider. The next item on the agenda is Chairman's report. I just want to take this time to thank all of the great mothers out there for all that they do to make us all happy and to keep us all healthy. So happy Mother's Day, all you mothers, and keep up the good work. Agenda item number 6, Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I struggled to unmute, but good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for all your patience as we continue to do these Zoom meetings, including the budgetary meetings, which we have scheduled for a final adoption on Wednesday night, or at least additional discussion and deliberation on Wednesday night. I know that this isn't easy. We've all missed each other. And the fact that we continue to struggle with the unmute button in order to speak, that oftentimes our Zoom screens continue to get frozen. We are all looking forward to gathering together and being able to conduct these meetings in person. I know that I am, but our community continues to stay healthy, and we continue to be focused on making sure that our families are safe. As you know, things are opening up at the state level and consequently at the local level. There were some adjustments this past Saturday, May 1st. There's some more state adjustments on the 19th and the 20th. So those things hopefully will continue to pan out so that we can ensure a healthy return back to a more normal, or at least the former routine that we were used to for the past many decades and centuries. That being said, there is only one item on the agenda. In addition to the ordinance, there is a cash advance for Pumpkin Delight School. With that, I respectfully request your consideration and action. Happy to answer any questions that come up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed that a member of the public just raised their hand, so I'm going to let them speak at this time. Member of the public, please state your name and ask your question.
Okay, sure. So good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Fino. Do I need my address too, or?
Yes.
My address is 35 Arch Street. I am coming to this meeting as a parent and also as the PTA president. And I just want to start by thanking Mayor Blake and this Board of Aldermen and also the Board of Finance for considering this renovation and putting it hopefully into your plans to give our schools some updates. We're very excited for the updated media center and a new gym and lunchroom. And I think our children are really going to enjoy it. One thing is, you know, as a parent group, we're very hopeful that the plan can also contain the upgrades to the ventilation and AC, as this is an issue in our school. And also with everything that's been going on health-wise, this has, you know, in the past year and a half become a big, an even bigger issue with making sure our kids are, you know, breathing clean air and staying healthy. So this is very important to all the parents at PDS, and this is one of our top priorities. The other thing at our school that's different than the other elementary schools is we have a second floor, which is really the top of our concerns because the ventilation up there is very poor. I know I've had kids up, you know, my own children up there, you know, the beginning of the school year in the summer, and they're literally coming home drenched and exhausted and sweating. And, you know, there really is a need for ventilation if nothing else, up on that second floor to help those children be more comfortable and in a better learning environment. So we're super excited for the renovation, but also hopeful that hopefully within the budget, there's a way to include those ventilation and AC upgrades for our children. So that's what I wanted to share, and I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Viano, for your comments. The next item on our agenda is there is no unfinished business. At this point, I will entertain a motion to reorder the agenda to move items 12A1 as the next item on the agenda so we can vote on the bonding ordinance.
Second,
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Beatty,
Yes.
Alderman Gaynor,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
yes.
Alderman Golden,
Yes.
Alderman
Yes.
Hardeman, Alderman Harlow,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe,
Yes.
Alderman Parente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli,
Yes.
Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis.
Yes.
All are in favor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The motion passes unanimously. Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ordinance committee of the Board of Aldermen met earlier this evening, along with members of the permanent facilities and the school district, the permanent schools, staff members, including Assistant Superintendent Richatelli, to consider an ordinance appropriating $12,915,000 for improvements to Pumpkin Delight Elementary School and authorizing the issuance of $12,915,000 bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose. This was discussed in the ordinance committee and was voted unanimously through with a yes recommendation to the full board. I'd like to submit that, Mr. Chairman, as a motion.
There's a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I can't put my hand up. I don't know why, but it's not allowing me to, but I'd like to talk.
Yes, Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and good evening, everyone. I did make mention that air conditioning was an extremely important piece in the education of our kids during those months of fall and in the summertime, leading into the summertime. Having gone through the construction personally on different levels, I find that it's abhorrent and really not very pleasing to see air conditioning units hanging out of windows on in particular rooms where there are children with IEPs that need to have air conditioned rooms. I know that I did make an amendment to talk about adding another $700,000, which that number was most inappropriate because obviously there's a threshold of a 5%, which probably would be about $100,000, or in order not to go renew the bonding and to go through that whole process again. But as I say again, I think it's extremely important. I think the mayor had indicated the fact that we're going to have enough money, and I've heard from other superintendents, I have friends of mine who say that there's so much money coming down that they don't even know how they're going to spend that money. So I just hope somewhere in our ad alternates, somewhere in our sharpening our pencil, that we or pencils that we can get that air conditioning for the buildings. I know it's going to be important to the educational process because we're going to be utilizing the buildings more and more during the summer times. We always had a scuffle about to make sure that when we had summer school, we all got into one building where there was partial air conditioning or air conditioning. In Harborside, when I was principal of Harborside, the fact is that we used Harborside during the summertime because we had some air conditioned rooms. But I really find it extremely, extremely important for the educational process. And especially on that second floor, as that parent had indicated the fact that it really gets hot with these flat roofs. So I would hopefully, and I would trust at this point in time that, as the mayor had indicated, that there would be funding that would be found to supplement the idea of putting the air conditioning in the entire building so that we don't have to put it on our credit card and we can get those funds, use those funds coming down from the federal government. Because I know through the ESSER funds, even through our non-lapsing educational funding appropriate or line item, that we could probably address that issue. So thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to observe again, we've been talking about the renovations of Pumpkin Delight for some time. A few years ago, I say it was probably 2 or 3 years BC before COVID. I know that because we were all there in person. Mr. Bradbury took us for a tour of several of the schools over on the west side of town in my district, but also schools that I had attended. West Shore Middle School, which used to be K Avenue, Jonathan Law High School, and Pumpkin Delight among the four. I remember being struck by how different, obviously, West Shore had been transformed from K Avenue into a middle school, and also noticing, of course, Jonathan Law, some of the renovations that have been done there over the years, new gymnasiums and so forth, since I attended, which was a long time ago. But Pumpkin Delight was a revelation because we could go to Pumpkin Delight for industrial arts every Thursday from K Avenue School. And although we didn't have access to the whole school, I remember clearly going through the halls to get into our classes and get back on the bus. And it was just reminded, the multi-purpose room with the green tables that are still there were there when I was there. And we're talking like 1967. The school was already almost 20 years old at this point. So some of these renovations are long overdue, and we're very happy to finally consider them and hopefully pass this bond package to get that accomplished. I also want to concur with Alderman Vitale. I do believe that having the air conditioning and the HVAC up to full capacity is something we should aspire to with any new funding that comes down. I understand the limitations on it right now with the 5% allowance, but hopefully we will be able to do that, hopefully concurrent with the rest of the project, if at all possible. But I do agree, I'd like to see that also incorporated into it. Most buildings like automobiles, it used to be a special option to have air conditioning. It really shouldn't be. And I think there's some very good reasons why we want to make sure, as one of the member of the public mentioned, that the air is as clean and well filtered, well ventilated can be. I appreciate it, and I hope that we will be able to vote affirmatively for this bond tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Alderman Giannatasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, good evening to the members of the board. I also do sit on the ordinance committee, and I rise in support of this bonding before us. And I do also have concerns, share the same concerns as Alderman Vitale. Alderman Vitale has lived this. He was a principal in a building. He knows what it's like to not have air conditioning. I think air conditioning has become a quality of life. I think it is very important for people to be comfortable, especially in a city or public building. Children, parents, teachers, I think we should probably in the future consider air conditioning more of our schools to full capacity. The mayor indicated that not all schools are at full capacity, but I think the times have changed. I think we need to support this for our students. So I just would like to share my thoughts that I am in favor of this. And also, as Alderman Vitale indicated, the mayor has been very good at finding funding with grants and things like that so we can pay for this. We certainly don't want to pay for it with taxpayer dollars, but it is a very sensitive issue and it's of high importance. So I hope that we're able to secure the funding moving forward so we can get this building built right the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Giannatasio. Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Parente.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. And through you, Chairman, I would like to know just an outline roughly of the way that the bonding money will be applied for the renovations. And then I'm also just wondering why the air conditioning piece wasn't incorporated into that plan. Was it with the other renovations of the other schools that were most recently renovated? So I don't know to whom that should go. Maybe Alderman Smith or the mayor can guide us as to who should speak to that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, through you, and I'll start it off. I saw that Jim Riccitelli had raised his hand as well, who can fill in some of the details. But air conditioning is part of the new construction component of this project. So the entire section that is new construction will be air conditioned, as well as some of the older portions of the building, like the media center. The architects and the engineers who are helping us with the bid documents will also incorporate an ad alternate, so that if the bids come in low and we can fund it through the project in general, the other portions of the building, perhaps the entire building, will be air conditioned through that. Or there are other grant opportunities that we know are coming down the road. One of those is through the American Rescue Plan, and they have indicated, the federal government, that one of the areas that those funds should be eligible for are ventilation and air conditioning. So that is something that we understood would be 100% paid for by the federal government, as opposed to the majority of these funds coming on the back of this, the taxpayer's credit card, something that we would have to fund, not just the overall cost, but the financing as well. So that's part of it. But the approximate $13 million project, and that's with financing, is what the architects and engineers are going to put out. They are going to list a couple of ad alternates in case bids come in low. The good news is that financing is at an all-time low. So the amount of this bond that's associated with financing is less than you normally would see. It's only 5% as opposed to 8 or 10. The bad news is that right now, some construction costs and construction materials are higher than normal. So I don't know if those two balance out, but they come close to balancing out. And I'll let Jim Riccitelli talk about some of the past projects. Again, most of our recent additions, for example, the last two big ones that we had were West Shore Middle School and East Shore Middle School. Those were the two biggest projects that we've done over the course of the last 8 to 10 years. We incorporated air conditioning just into the new sections that we built, the new construction. But I'll let Jim talk about some of the other components of that question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Aldermen. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. And Alderman Parente, thank you for the question of because it just segues into. I'll just give you a general overview of the project, and I apologize. Some of you are on the ordinance committee meeting, so you'll be hearing it for a second time. But what the project entails. The Pumpkin Delight School is one of our two oldest schools. It was built in 1949, and then there was an addition put on in 1955. And since then, there have been general upgrades like new roof, new windows, things like that. But no major projects have taken place at Pumpkin Delight. So many portions of the school, when you walk down the halls, it looks like it was built in 1950, and it's been meticulously maintained by Pat Bradbury and his staff. So the school is in excellent condition, but it really does need to be brought up to 2021 standards, educational standards, code compliance, and the like. The project itself, what it entails, the current gymnasium / cafeteria, which serves as the multi-purpose room, it's woefully too small for today's modern educational standards. This project would add an addition with a new gym, cafeteria, kitchen, and that would serve as the multi-purpose room, in addition to being available, of course, for community use. The current cafeteria / gymnasium would become the new media center. Most of our elementary schools in Milford have a dedicated media center, and Pumpkin Delight does not. Right now, they just have 2 classrooms, which basically serves as a library, but does not have the up-to-date equipment that other elementary schools in Milford have, and you know what the educational standards of today are. Also incorporated into the project is the security upgrades in the vestibule. Like the other schools have either already, we've been doing the schools in phases for the secured vestibules. So some schools are already done. Some schools are being done this summer, and some schools are being done next summer. But the security upgrades in the vestibule will be incorporated into this project. So we'll be up to date with all of the state security infrastructure standards. In addition, there will be general upgrades throughout the school, code compliance updates, the toilet facilities, which again are 1949 in the 1949 part of the building, will be brought up to today's standards. So similar to, as the mayor said, our last 2 big projects were West Shore and previous to that East Shore. And it's a general renovation of the building, something that the community and the educators, the students, and the families can be proud of. So that's a general overview of the project. I would be remiss in not saying that with me tonight is the chair of the Board of Education, Susan Glennon, Superintendent Dr. Kutaya, Assistant Superintendent Amy Fedigan, Principal of Pumpkin Delight School, Sherrod McNeil, Pat Bradbury, who is our Director of Facilities, and of course, Matt Woods, who has been the longtime chairman of the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee, who your board has entrusted with planning, designing, and implementing this project. So I think that answers the question of the general overview, Alderman Parente.
I do too, thank you. And just one more question for you, Chairman. So it really got me thinking what my colleague, Alderman Vitale, was talking about with the air conditioning, especially in light of the fact that during COVID, we're probably gonna have to do some more work with the students over the summer. So where does the granting come from? If COVID weren't a factor, where would that be coming from to make those kind of capital improvements? And is that something that we should attend to now, you know, with the summer coming? I think maybe that's a question for the mayor, or just a little unfamiliar with that process, would like to understand it better.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Parente, this project is not going to start until, you know, best case scenario is this summer. And actually, we're not going to get word back from the state that our 37.5% has been approved for reimbursement. And then we will award the bids to whoever the contractor is that was the lowest bid, or the lowest credible bid. So this project is not going to be complete for, you know, certainly not this summer, but in terms of all 14 of our schools, we do plan to continue to host some type of, and again, probably the superintendent is best positioned to answer this question about the type of schooling that we have planned. But, we do plan to have some type of activities in all 14 of our schools, is my understanding. There's going to be some work that is going to be charged by the state government and the federal government to make sure that some of those learning losses are accounted for, and our schools are going to step in. Happy to answer those questions in more detail, but perhaps Dr. Kataya or Dr. Fedigan would be best positioned to talk to you about the programming that we have in place for the summer.
Thank you, Mayor Blake. Alderman Parente, can you clarify your question? And you're asking about the summer academic and social emotional programming we're offering, or are you asking about facilities and infrastructures?
The latter. And no, I was just curious. I was presuming that there would be more activity in the schools this summer due to COVID. And with the ventilation, I was thinking just from what we talked about in our budget meetings, that the ventilation piece is something COVID related, that there would be granting for. The air conditioning is something separate. And because it was raised by my colleague, I thought it was something just to think about during a renovation process, and thinking about the other schools with activity maybe increasing over the summer. So I was just trying to get a sense of where that grant money would come from. So I don't know that you're the person to answer that question, but.
We will prioritize using the grant money for academics and social emotional supports, and we'll try to be outside as much as possible. I don't know that they'll be at all 14 campuses, but we will centralize them and use hopefully some centers that do have indoor air conditioning. But the grant monies that are being discussed right now, I shared with this board the 4 buckets that are allowable for spending at my last time I was with you in April. And there will be a priority around the academic and social emotional supports of our young people by using those monies.
Yes, you gave us a great summary of that, so thank you.
At this time, is there any more questions on the motion? Alderman Harlow.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to reiterate the support of my fellow aldermen, and I do support this bonding for the improvement to the school, but I also want to emphasize that I really support that we look at the climate control for the entire building, for the students' safety, for their comfort, for parents, as we heard tonight, and also too, quite frankly, for the efficiency of the building. I don't quite understand why you'd have a building that has air conditioning in half of it and half of it not be air conditioned. Just for the efficiency of the systems, I think it makes a lot more sense to have a building that is fully climate controlled with the same system or systems that work in conjunction with each other, as opposed to old and new. So I just want to be on the record to say full support, and look forward to moving the project forward. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Marlowe.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. First comment just to, again, as my colleagues have said, the support for the project. I think it's overdue, and I think the school will benefit from the work that's done there with the additions and such. I would also echo some of the statements. I would like to see if there's any way, obviously, that the air conditioning of the whole school can be done. And as a person who runs these projects actually much larger than this, we're going to get the most benefit by doing that work now because of the bidding process. You're going to get, we don't want to hold off on doing this till next year or the year after, because you're not going to get the value, and you're going into a school again to disrupt it afterwards. So I guess, Mayor, like we were saying, anything that can be done to attain the financing to do this would be well worth it. Just from a practical financial standpoint as well of doing the work. My question also would be is this enough of a priority that something else within the project would be held off to do the air conditioning? And maybe that's to you, Mr. Riccitelli.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Marlowe, the committee, the committee has spent many meetings prioritizing things. And, at this point, the committee believes that it would be compromising some of the essential pieces of the building, which are the addition to the gymnasium, the creation of the media center, the security upgrades, and other areas that are essential. So they've gone through that process of prioritization. They too would, expressed a great desire to air condition and ventilate the entire building. But in the budget itself, it just didn't pan out.
Thank you. I'm through you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, I appreciate that. I know I'm not involved in the project. I don't know all the inner workings of, I know you guys, and Matt Woods does a great job of running that committee. And how much of a contingency does this project have? And could that part of that contingency be used to help pay for this?
Yeah, I believe, Eddie, 5% are we carrying? Or 8%?
We are carrying 8%.
I know it's a little early in a project to start using contingency, but if that can be helped to offset the cost of the air conditioning.
Right.
But again, I just wanted to express my support for the project. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Alderman Marlowe's point, the contingency, what we found at West Shore Middle School and Pumpkin Delight is very similar to West Shore. Once we got into those walls, we found some real structural problems that we had to deal with, and the contingency was eaten up, before the project even started, really. So I appreciate and it certainly will be a priority if the money is there. Mr. Chairman, could I ask if Principal McNeil could address the board, if it pleases the board?
Yeah, if he's on, he certainly could speak.
Shroud, can you open?
I am on. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Good evening, everyone. I do apologize. When the meeting first started, there was a raise your hand function, and now that I've become a participant, that function is now gone. So I've been trying to wave my hand. I placed a comment in there, but I'm certainly fortunate to have the opportunity to speak to everyone. So formally, good evening. And I just want to reiterate how appreciative we are as the Pumpkin Delight community of the concerted efforts of our mayor, Mr. Blake, our boards of aldermen and of finance, as well as the permanent schools and facilities building committee. I have had the pleasure of working with the committee over the past few months, and it is apparent that the well-being of our children, staff, and families who attend our schools is at the forefront of their decision-making. So thank you to all of our committee members. Additionally, it is apparent that the well-being of our families and our children is at the forefront of everyone's decision-making based upon the discussion that's taken place this evening. So thank you all for your efforts there. And just to echo all of the statements regarding the need for air conditioning and ventilation throughout the entirety of the building. As a person who's been there throughout the course of the school year, it gets incredibly warm, especially upstairs as the only elementary school who has a second floor. Not only the second floor, but throughout the building in itself. So we are appreciative of this discussion. And again, just want to express my thanks for the opportunity to propose this renovation and to add on the air conditioning and the ventilation into it as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can at this point in time.
Any questions from any board member? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for your comments and your willingness to answer any of our questions. Is there any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Parente? You're muted, Alderman Parente.
Sorry about that. Again, through you, Chairman, and thank you to the principal for those remarks. And I did hear him, re-emphasize about the air conditioning. I was concerned to hear the public comment at the beginning about kids, and I presume then the teachers being drenched. That doesn't seem acceptable to me. So by whatever mechanism on the city side that we can work with the mayor to figure out how to attend to that, I would like to make sure we do that. I do support, sounds like there's a lot of work that went into this proposal, and I do support the renovation plan, but that was disturbing to hear. So I think we should try to address it sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Beatty.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairperson, to the panel. And thank you, Principal McNeil. I remember meeting you when you were new. You're not so new anymore. What a baptism by fire. But we have the same regard for you as you have for us. And thank you for all your work. I think that I speak with enthusiasm for the project. It's not new. I mean, I remember coming around. I didn't say much tonight because the support has been ongoing, especially getting the school up to parity in security and other matters. But now, as I listen to the discussion, I wish there was a little bit more guarantee in the foreground that the ventilation, not just air conditioning, but the entire issue of ventilation would be more in the foreground. Or if I understood Alderman Parente's remarks, is there a request from the city side or the superintendent's side to make that paramount? And this does not have anything to do with the hard work and long time involvement of the committee. It's just listening to the commentary, and we're evolving to the point where I wish there were a way. I understand the point that if we do not approve, we put the project at risk, and that is not my intention at all, and I wouldn't vote for that. But I wonder if we could put a little teeth in our promise to one another and to the community to put the ventilation in the foreground with the monies that come through that we anticipate in whatever form of grant is coming down the pike. Thank you.
Alderman Parente.
Hi. Thank you. Through you, Chairman, again, just for edification. I believe that there is COVID recovery money for ventilation to do directly with COVID. I just want to make sure that that's a separate conversation. I'm talking about air conditioning in our city and schools, that there would be a different mechanism than recovery money for that to get done. It sounded like earlier the mayor mentioned that there could be a method to do that. So again, I would just say that that's something that we should, consider as a priority. I don't know the mechanism by which we do that, but that's how I feel, and I do support the renovation plan. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Dr. Kataya.
Mr. Chair, I just want to bring clarification on the acceptable use of the ESSER funds.
You know that.
Because I think that's what's happening here is it feels like there's a public commitment to using the ESSER 3 funds to air condition Pumpkin. And I think that it could be a very dangerous promise to make at this point, because I want to share the process in which that occurs. We just submitted our ESSER 2 application. And that has to be, there is an application where you have to identify a SMART goal, an assessed need, and then what intended outcomes are as related to those 4 buckets. And I know it's 3 weeks ago, but 3 weeks ago I presented you 4 buckets within which these are allowable. And yes, as Alderman Parente stated, it does state ventilation and HVAC in there as related to the issues, air quality issues related to pandemics. So we just today received information on ESSER 3 funds. The application process hasn't even been opened up. So of the $8 million, about 2.1 or to 3, we've already submitted money application for, and primarily those funds are focusing on social emotional well-being of our children. The 5.3 in ESSER 3 that we have not applied for yet still has to be planned out. And all applications for grants must be approved by the State Department of Education. So I cannot publicly state that we will apply for full air conditioning of Pumpkin. Out of the 5.3 million, we're looking at anywhere between 800,000 and $1 million of that to air condition just the second floor, if I have those numbers right, Mr. Riccitelli, of Pumpkin Delight. So now we're committing about 20% of full grant money to go toward air conditioning of one school when there are 14. And we're really needing to focus on what the recovery that COVID has created. So this is very, very, very early conversation. I mean, literally, we just got information today on ESSER 3. So I cannot publicly make a commitment that we would use ESSER 3 funds to air condition Pumpkin, albeit we will discuss it and take it into consideration. So I just want you all to know that there is an approval process for this, that whatever application we submit for ESSER 3, the State Department has to consider and approve. So I just want clarity here at this early stage.
And
We
Mr.
will, of course, discuss it and consider it. It is on the table. We will talk about the possibilities. So I also want everyone to know that.
And Mr. Chairman, through you, it's my understanding that while ESSER 2 flowed through the state as a pass-through, there was an application process. ESSER 3 flows directly to the municipalities and the municipalities Board of Education. There isn't that same process for ESSER 2 where you had to apply for the specific use. There is a less cumbersome process where you get the money directly without having to do that same type of ESSER 2 process. So it's less restrictive as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, like I said, we're just now getting information about it. So.
Thank you, Dr. Kataya, and thank you, Mayor Blake, for your comments. Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you, Dr. Kataya, for that realization or that update on the ESSER grants. But I think the mayor was, I think if I'm not mistaken, Mayor Blake, were you referring to the American Rescue Act that we were able to get some of that money from? So I don't think it was either the ESSER grants. It's probably that American Rescue grant that we're going to be able to tap.
They're one of the same, Alderman Vitale.
Pardon?
The $5-6 million that was being referred to as ESSER 3, that comes from the American Rescue Plan.
So is there any part of that the city is going to get rather than earmarked for the Board of Education that is almost in the?
Also going to get things, money through CDBG as well as an undetermined amount because we don't have a county system of government here, and municipalities will get that directly. The only portion we know that can be used, however, for HVAC ventilation, though, so far, again, the Treasury has not come out with their guidance, is that $5.4 million that's going directly to schools.
Right. So in some form or not, we're going to be able to hopefully tap into other grants that are going to be coming down the pipe. So the issue here is that I feel confident in what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, that we're going to be able to do this as an ad alternate because I think it's extremely important. No matter what happens, is that when we put kids in particular buildings, because those particular buildings are air conditioned, and it kind of sways or tilts the whole process because you have to bus these kids to those areas and get those kids there and whatever. So it's going to be more in the long run. So again, the equity as far as what's going on, there are still schools that still don't have the dedicated media centers. Some of the elementary schools don't. So hopefully we'll be looking a long range plan and kind of planning these possibilities that we can bring these to fruition. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Sutton. Alderman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say very briefly, a thank you to Dr. Kataya for providing us with that explanation and perspective with regard to all of the schools within the system about the ability of the funds from the federal government and how they can be used to improve the ventilation and the other aspects in light of the COVID virus. Thank you, Dr. Kataya.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Genitazio.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the members of the board, after listening to all of the discussion, it's occurred to me that I feel the need to make a motion to amend this project by the 5% threshold, which would be approximately 550,000, to reinsure that this project will be completed with air conditioning. I think it seems to be important to all of us. And I think it's a great meeting. It's a meeting of the minds. And we do have the opportunity to do that now, rather than take the position and wait for different types of funding. I think this would be a step in the right direction. And I think it would be appropriate. So I'm going to make that motion to amend 5%, which is approximately 550,000, in order to move the project forward with the understanding that it would include the air conditioning.
Second to that motion.
We have an amendment to the motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, could we just clarify an amount, an exact amount? If it's going to be increased, can our finance director give us a exact figure for a 5% increase? Doing the math, it looks like from my calculations, and I could be corrected, but $645,750 would represent 5%, unless the motion incorporated the other part, which you said $550,000.
Well, I would rescind the 550,000 and just leave it at 5%, which would equate to the 645,000. Through you, Mr. Chairman, in the form of a motion.
Second to that motion.
We have a motion, an amendment to the motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Alderman Beatty.
I don't,
Any
I'm
discussion?
I'm lowering my hand. I would like when you do read it, to repeat reading the motion. And if it ever gets called to a vote, to repeat it out loud.
We'll have to repeat it right now. Alderman Genitazio, can you repeat that motion, please, the amendment to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I'm amending the main motion to increase the bonding by 5%, which equates to approximately $645,000.
It's
We need to be more exact. What is it?
$45,750. The mayor made that very clear. So the amendment is on the floor and seconded to raise 5%, which is $645,750. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Alderman Gainer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if it's the mayor or Peter Erudici, but if we're increasing this amount, is it specifically earmarked for air conditioning versus, as Jim Riccitelli said, you can open up a building and find all kinds of overages that you didn't expect. So it seems like we're all in agreement that the air conditioning / ventilation is a priority for the school. Can we specify that that's really what it's for and it's not for anything that they've discovered when they open up the building?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Gaynor, I'll take a whack at this and then let Jim Riccitelli follow up with some of the more detailed information. But again, all of this is conjecture. The architects and engineers give us an estimate based on their expertise of what the bids will come back at, based on their experience in the market at this point. The market at this point may not be exactly the same as when this goes out to bid. We hope it is, because we have an idea what it's going to come back at. Once we open up the buildings, there may be issues. However, we incorporated 8% contingency into this budget. So the money that's already before you, the approximate $2.4 million less the $615,000 for the financing, that includes an 8% contingency in case something arises when we do open up the walls. The discussion that we've had both at the ordinance committee level and at this meeting was that as part of this bid process, we were going to incorporate ad alternates, so that if a funding mechanism arose, for example, we already know that we can utilize some of the American Rescue Plan money for HVAC and ventilation. We have a bucket of money that we know is coming that we don't have to put on the city's credit card and have taxpayers, Milford taxpayers pay. Perhaps, taxpayers in another part of the country are going to be paying this, but this additional amount, this approximate 5% that we're considering increasing the bonding by, that is still not going to be enough, perhaps for the entire air conditioning, but it will be more. Would that be then supplemented by additional amounts if we come up short? Possibly, but some of this is still speculation. We need to go through this process, though, as it's laid out, as opposed to coming to you with an exact amount for the bid. We cannot do that because we need to first get approval by the state in order to be considered for the 37.5% reimbursement. They've laid out the process in the past. They allowed more flexibility. They do not anymore. We have to come to you and get authorization for the funding before this is actually put out to bid. And that's why we're giving you mealy-mouth answers with, we think this is going to be enough, or we're hoping this is going to be enough, and we can't be exact because this is the way the state lays it out.
Mr. Chairman, if I could take a quick stab at Alderman Gaynor's question. You've entrusted the project to the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee. So they ultimately have the say in what goes into the project and what doesn't. And the mayor's right, when the bids come back, if there's, if construction costs continue to rise the way that they do, there may be other things that have to be cut out. I will say this, there's a consensus amongst the administration at Milford Public Schools and the building committee that ventilation and air conditioning is a very important component to the project. So if the board were to approve additional funding, obviously I cannot speak for the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee, but I think very strong weight would be with that committee to follow through on the wishes of this board and Milford Public Schools to incorporate the ventilation and air conditioning. I don't know, Matt, if you want to follow up on that, or you're okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the original budget that the building committee came up with back in February, shortly after we hired Tecton Architects, did include full air conditioning and full ventilation for the entire school. We had to cut that back because there wasn't enough money in the projected budget for the essential elements of the project. So the building committee wanted air conditioning and ventilation, and we still want it. And if there's enough money to pay for it, that's what we'll do.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Alderman Marlowe.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chairman, possibly to the mayor. Just for a point of clarification on the amount that's bonded, that includes the financing in that?
Yes, I mentioned that normally the finance director asks us to include 8 to 10% financing because of the rates at this point. He allowed us to just add the 5% to the total cost. So it's about $615,000 in financing, which is, 5%.
Yeah, no, I guess where I was headed with that is when we approve when we're looking to up it by 5%, is that number based on the total, including the finance, or is it on what the original cost should be?
It's my understanding that it is the total bond ordinance.
Okay.
But again, our city attorney is on the line. He could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the bond ordinance inclusive of the financing.
Okay, thank you. It was just a question, point of interest, that's all.
Any more questions on the amendment? Alderman Beatty.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairperson, to everybody. I'd like to clarify, maybe some of my comments got us off on this tactic. I asked for clarification that after I had heard the presentation, I wanted to reiterate my support for the project, but that I understood how ventilation was in the foreground and wondered if we somehow could keep that. It didn't mean that I didn't understand the difference between the ESSER grant and the applications for academic programming, all that good goal, and the catch up for COVID relief and the learning and the social environment, or that we want to misuse funds. We also know that there are parameters and specifications for the grant. So it was just saying that in the discussion that came up for me as a supporter to keep it in the foreground, and I trusted the committee. I also understand that the superintendent can't say publicly what funds she didn't get yet and didn't apply for, and maybe misappropriated can be used for this project. Just keep it in mind. With that in mind, I am not in favor of an amendment. I don't want to slow the project down. I trust the people in front of me, the staff of the Board of Ed, who we've had the discussion, and the architects and the designers and the committee and everybody to go forward and make sure that that's the way we're looking at the project. So just to let you know, if there is an amendment, I'm not in favor of it. I'll just reiterate my original support. I hope that clarifies anything that I added that may have side. Thank you.
There's an amendment on the floor in a second. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, hopefully I can clarify, and if I'm wrong, the mayor can clarify my colleague's comment that the 5%, an additional 5% does not slow the process down. We're in the threshold of adding it within the means of the bonding. The other thing is that, if we bond and we ask for more money in the bond, we don't have to spend it if it doesn't come out to that, because we're not going to be charged for what we spend anyway with the bond. Is that not correct, Mr. Mayor? That if we ask for another 5% and we only use 3% of it, we don't have to we're not be charged with the entire amount that we hopefully would be bonding. Is that true, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale, we only bond those funds that we ultimately
use. Right. So if in other words, if we don't use all of that 640, if the amendment passes, that we add the additional 5% and we don't use it all, we don't get charged for what we use. That's basically it. So we're really erring on the side of safety so that we have a cushion there that we can put the air conditioning and the HVAC totally in the building. So I just wanted to clarify that it doesn't slow the process down. With our decision tonight with the threshold of adding a 5% does not add any time to it. So thank you.
Alderman Harlow.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the board, Alderman Vitale, thank you for clarifying that as well. Just one comment that as I sit here and listen to the back and forth regarding this project, my opinion, and it sounds like the majority of the board's opinion is this is a project that needs the ventilation system, it needs the air conditioning, needs the climate control done right. So in my opinion, this project has gone from the 12.9 to the 13.6 that we're looking to bond. To me, it seems a little silly that it came to us without the air conditioning because it clearly needs it. So let's discuss it and look at it that way to say, look, if it's ESSER funds, if it's American Cities Act, whatever it is to get the money, if we have to wait to get the money, whatever it takes. But I think we all need a clarification and we all need to be confident that this building project needs this improvement. And there's no option to say we can't do it, we can do it, whatever. It needs the improvement with the monies that we're going to allocate for it tonight. So just again, my support, I want the project, but it's got to be done right. Thanks.
Are there any more questions on the amendment? Madam Secretary, roll call vote on the amendment, please.
Now I'll change.
Alderman Beatty,
Yes.
Alderman Gainer,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
yes,
Alderman Golden, Alderman Hardiman,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe,
Yes.
Alderman Parente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith, Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli, Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis.
Yes.
Alderman Winsmith just joined again. Alderman Winsmith, Secretary would like to know how you want to vote. Alderman Winsmith. Madam Secretary,
Okay, so we have 12 in favor and 3 that are having technical difficulties.
we have 12 in favor and 3 have difficulties. The amendment passes. On the original motion. Any more discussion on the original motion?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I am a yes. My computer shut off and I couldn't connect to audio, so I apologize about that. I'm a yes.
13 yes and 2 having trouble. Motion, the amendment passes. Any more discussion on the original motion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
How do you vote on this?
Alderman Beatty,
Yes. Right? Am I
Wait a minute.
correct?
Can we get
Wait.
clarification?
Hey, wait a minute.
Well, can we clarify what we're voting on, please, now?
Yeah,
This
I
is
think
the
it's-
original motion as amended with the additional, the additional 5%.
So you have to vote it down or vote for it? You have to vote for it if you want it to go through?
As amended.
This is the motion as amended.
motion.
So that's a
Okay.
yes, correct, then what we just voted on?
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm supposed to just give my vote, but I respectfully request from now going forward, whenever we have an amendment, that we read the motion into the record, what we're voting on, so it's not confusing. But I vote yes on the amended motion.
Alderman Gainer,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
yes,
Alderman Golden, Alderman Hardiman,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe,
Yes.
Alderman Parente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith, Yes. Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli,
I'm sorry, I was knocked off. I just got back on. What are we voting for?
This is on the main motion as amended.
Yes.
Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis.
Yes.
14 in favor and one still having technical difficulties.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Motion passes 14 and one having difficulty. The motion passes with the amendment. The next item on the agenda, agenda number 8, moving on to new business. Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 8A.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we just voted on that. That was approval for the attached resolution regarding the cash advance for improvements to Pumpkin Delight Elementary School.
Mr. Chairman, we returned back to 8A. We just voted on, we reordered the agenda and voted on the ordinance, and now it's the cash advance.
Exactly right.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the amended resolution as was just voted upon by this board regarding cash advance for improvements to Pumpkin Delight Elementary School.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no, roll call vote. Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Beatty,
Yes.
Alderman Gaynor,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
Yes.
Alderman Golden, Alderman Hardiman,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe,
Yes.
Alderman Prente, Alderman Prente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith.
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli,
Yes.
Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis.
Yes.
14 in favor, one having difficulties, technical difficulties.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Motion passes with 14 yeses and one having difficulty. Next item on the agenda, agenda item number 9, there is no new business. Agenda item number 10, there is no budget memo transfers. Moving on to refunds, Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 11A.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board approves refunds as attached to our packet in the amount of $224,275.58.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, roll call vote.
Alderman Beatty.
I
Alderman
need
Beatty,
a clarification on the number. It's 224, 275.58. I thought I heard 400,000. I may have misheard. What am I voting on? The refund in the amount of, just so I know, I'm first, so I sometimes need to ask.
Mr. Chairman, may I remake the motion
Absolutely.
for the benefit of Alderman Beatty?
Thank you.
I move that the board approves refunds in the amount of $224,275.58.
Second.
Motion has been made and has been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Madam Secretary.
Alderman Beatty,
Yes, thank you.
Alderman Gaynor,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
Yes.
Alderman Golden, Alderman Hardiman,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe, Alderman Parente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith.
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli,
Yes.
Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis.
Yes.
14 in favor, one having technical difficulties.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. 14 yes and one still having difficulty. Agenda item number 12, are there any reports of standing committees? Hearing none, move on to agenda item number 13. Are there any reports from any special committees? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Alderman Beatty,
Yes.
Alderman Gainer,
Yes.
Alderman Genatasio,
Yes.
Alderman Golden, Alderman Hardiman,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Harla,
Yes.
Alderman Marlowe,
Yes.
Alderman Parente,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Winthrop Smith,
Yes.
Alderman Sutton,
Yes.
Alderman Tranquilli,
Yes.
Alderman Vitro,
Yes.
Alderman Vitale,
Yes.
Alderman Willis.
Yes.
14 in
I want
favor.
to say thank you, everyone, for your patience during this Zoom meeting. And have a good night. I know it's difficult, but we're going to get by this sooner before later. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.